So about 2 years ago, my dad got me one of these. I'm not sure that it even fits in the frame. That is one of the old servers he had at his work, and it has been decommissioned for quite a while. So yeah, one day it arrived here, and it's basically do whatever you want with it. So I messed around with it a little, and it has one of these inside. Intel, the computer inside. Yeah, this is an Intel Pentium 3 from, I think, 1999. So quite an old processor by now. And it runs at 1 gigahertz. I'm not sure if this one exactly I have. This is not actually the one in the server. I have another one that is also a Pentium 3. So yeah, anyways, the one in the server is running at 1 gigahertz and it has 1 gigabyte of RAM. So about a year ago I installed Debian onto it, and it was, well, it was a start. I didn't know what operating system to put exactly, but some sort of Linux seemed quite okay for an old computer. Usually Linux performs better than Windows. So I played around with it a bit, compiled a few of my apps for it on Linux, and well, it worked quite poorly, let's say. I think so. In one of my games that I commonly use for this type of stuff, porting and testing on basically any operating system, I think it had about 1 frame per 2 seconds, which is not great. Yeah, eventually I figured out that there are no graphics drivers for this sort of a computer that is almost 25 years old now. And I looked a bit into what exactly are the specifications of it other than the CPU and RAM. And in terms of the GPU, it has some old AMD, I'm not sure, some Rage XL something GPU. Anyways, it's from pre-2000s, from the 90s. And I looked a bit at the specs of it, and it might actually support OpenGL, which is good enough for me. Framework in which I work with, SFML, requires OpenGL 1.1, and I think this GPU has exactly OpenGL 1.1, which is of course very old. The unfortunate thing is that I cannot test this OpenGL 1.1 on Linux because there are missing graphics drivers, and it was just emulating OpenGL on the CPU, which explains why there was 1 frame per 2 seconds. Eventually I decided to actually install Windows onto it someday, which is today, and give it a shot, see how well it performs. So from what I could find online, the latest drivers for this GPU were Windows XP. So I decided, yeah, sure, let's install Windows XP onto it. And this cool CD, which I've used, well, today for the first time, is hopefully all we'll need. Booting up that computer gives the old computer vibes from 2000s. So nothing special there, but it is loud. It is really loud. So installing Windows XP was a bit more complicated than usual because I installed Linux onto it. And apparently Windows XP cannot detect Linux partitions, so I had to boot into another Linux because I forgot the password of the Debian installation, and I had to boot into another Linux just to format the disk so that Windows could recognize it. After that, which took quite a while because it turns out the CD-ROM had either some dust in it or essentially it half of the time it detected the CDs, half of the time it didn't detect the CDs, so yeah, it wasn't great. Anyways, eventually I got Windows XP installed, which actually took those 30 or 40 minutes that were displayed on the left side of the setup. I know I think once installed Windows XP in a virtual machine, and that countdown on the side was essentially counting down seconds instead of minutes because of virtualization and the speed of computers nowadays. So now, as Windows XP is installed, the first thing that was missing was the audio card, because, fun fact, computers back then did not have audio ports on the motherboard, and there was a dedicated audio card, which this computer, as it was a server, did not have initially, so well, now it has one. Windows XP did not install anything automatically, so I needed to find the right drivers and hope that it does not have any viruses, which I don't think it had. I installed it, and well, there we go. We now have a Windows XP boot up sound. After that, I did a bit of old school retro gaming. Of course, the first game that you always have to play on a new Windows installation is Minesweeper. But I didn't have much luck there, so I moved on to one of my favorite childhood games, which is Dungeon Keeper. And I've recently noticed when I was in a video game museum that the game actually has a mature rating, which, we don't talk about that. So I booted up Dungeon Keeper from a CD because, yes, games used to come on CDs back in the days. It installed successfully, and then I ran the game and it actually booted up. What a surprise. Unfortunately, immediately after the title screen, my monitor just displays input not supported for whatever reason. Then in the menu, it again shows the image, but after the menu, it again shows input not supported. Looking online, it turns out that most likely what is happening here is the game would like a specific resolution and frame rate, and the monitor just doesn't know what to do with that. So yeah, it throws out input not supported error, which is not nice. Luckily, I have a solution for that. Oh yeah, I also forgot to mention that I ran DirectX diagnostics tool, which I think comes with every version of Windows. And apparently it recognized DirectX 9, which from that source online that told me that OpenGL 1.1 was available, it also told me that DirectX 6 was the latest available version. So yeah, maybe OpenGL 1.1 won't be the last version. I don't know, we'll see. So yeah, there is that one old VGA CRT monitor that we have at home, and it came in clutch today, so that's really great. After connecting to it, the game worked fine. What a surprise.
Into a new creatures are falling in battle. Beware, the Lord creatures are falling. Your minions are winning a battle. You have conquered this realm.
Alright, enough retro gaming. It's time to actually get some more modern software to run on this, as that was my initial goal. To see if OpenGL 1.1 can run. So the first step that is more of a side quest really is getting an actual browser to run, because up to this point I've been serving everything through Internet Explorer, which is quite old. It does not, I think, even support HTTPS, so everything I was serving was through my server, which is still HTTP. So my pick was Firefox. I use Firefox regularly, and of course there's no way that the latest version will work, but I gave it a shot. And the operating system was not supported. Windows 10 is the minimum these days. So I looked online what was the latest version of Firefox for Windows XP, and I think it was 53 point something from 2018. Which is, what, 7 years old, so not that far into the past. Unfortunately, after running the installer, it told me, hey, this CPU does not support SSE, which stands for something, SSE2 instructions, so yeah, this Firefox version won't work. So then I searched what was the last version of Firefox that didn't require these SSE2 instructions, and that was, I think, 48 or something from 2016, and that ended up installing just fine, which is great. Now we have a modern-ish internet browser that can actually access HTTPS sites. But yeah, it works even though it's really slow. I tried to get my apps that were compiled for the WebAssembly to work. Unfortunately, nothing happened when I visited the site. Probably something crashed behind the scenes. So the next goal was to actually get something that I've previously made to run on this super old machine. My pick, as always, was Chain Reaction 2, as it is very modular. There are many features that it can use, or if they're not available, it doesn't have to use. And I've ported it to all sorts of platforms, from the web to, well, my watch, to, I don't know, to, of course, the standard Windows, macOS, Linux, Android, iOS, Raspberry Pi. I even, a few videos ago, did a port over to the ESP32 microcontroller. Anyways, yeah, it can run on all sorts of platforms. It once also had a Windows XP version, back, I think, in the version 1.0. But of course, I would like to get the latest version to run, so I naturally compiled the latest version for Windows XP. This actually isn't the same as modern compilation for more modern versions of Windows. So in my case, I use MSVC, which is Microsoft's compiler. And by default, I think it uses the feature set, which can work as low as Windows Vista, I think, but not on Windows XP by default. If you run something, for example, I tried my level editor, which was compiled regularly as a regular app, it throws out that the app is not a Win32 application. I'm not sure why, what is wrong in the executable file, what changes between the Windows XP version and all of the others, why it's not compatible. That would be a project for another day. But yeah, essentially, if you want to compile something with MSVC for Windows XP, you have to use the toolset, which can be downloaded with the Visual Studio installer, and from there you can compile everything with that toolset, and fingers crossed, it should work. So that's basically what I did. I first by accident forgot to compile SFML as well with that toolset, so I had a mismatch. So after you actually compile SFML and your program with that old toolset, I tried running it on the server. The result was missing DLLs. The missing DLLs were VC runtime and MSVCP, which are, I'm not sure what exactly, but they are required if you use Microsoft's compiler. This can be fixed by just installing the Visual C++ redistributable, which can be downloaded from the Microsoft site. So that is basically what I did. Now, of course, the latest version of the redistributable package won't work with Windows XP, so I tracked down the latest version that works with Windows XP, which is a few years old now, and I tried to install that. The unfortunate thing is upon running the executable for installation, it throws out a sorry for the inconvenience crash log, basically. So yeah, something isn't right. So that was quite weird, unexpected, but I remember this was not my first time compiling for Windows XP, so I know I've seen some systems where this exact same thing happens, where the MSVC installer crashes, and all of the previous times I basically gave up there. But some of the times it would normally work. I haven't looked into why that happens, but I think today I've figured out exactly what happens. Anyways, before knowing that, there is one workaround that I thought I could do. When you're compiling stuff, you can link the MSVC libraries statically, so they will be all inside the executable, and then you won't have these DLLs missing. There is no way for that to happen because the app does not require those DLLs when it's running. So that is what I did, and running it, now my app basically behaves identically to the redistributable installer. Yeah, it just crashes and it gives me an error log. So clearly I cannot avoid that, so I have to look into a bit as to what exactly happens under the hood. Why does it crash? So with a bit of help from ChatGPT to help me analyze this situation, the error code that both of these apps gave me was something like 0xC000, I think 1D, which according to ChatGPT, and generally it makes sense, is an illegal instruction crash. Essentially, the illegal instruction means that the computer ran into, well, an instruction that it does not know what it is. So in my case, yeah, there was some instruction that the computer could not determine what it is, and it just stopped and crashed the app. Now this comes all the way back to that Firefox thingy. So Firefox could not install because of something called SSE2. So that is an instruction set on more modern CPUs. This CPU has SSE1 but does not have SSE2. So I had a feeling that that is exactly what happens. It ran into some instruction from the SSE2 instruction set and it just didn't know what to do with it, so it crashed. Luckily for me, the MSVC compiler, you can specify there what instruction set to use. And yes, in fact, by default, it uses the SSE2 instruction set. I ended up disassembling my own app to look for all of the instructions that are being used. And yes, in fact, there were several of the SSE2 instructions, so clearly we have to fix that before we can move on, as that will never work. So naturally, I just compiled my app with SSE1 enabled. That would prevent the app from using all of these newer instructions that the CPU can't handle. So how did that go? Well, not great. So even though I compiled my app for SSE, at first I thought that would be fine, but after running it, it crashed again with illegal instruction. After disassembling it, the same thing happened. There are still SSE2 instructions. The question now becomes why I compiled my app with SSE1. Well, basically, I'm using SFML, which is a dependency that gets compiled before my app, so I forgot to set SSE1 over to SFML. That was a quick fix, but again, the same issue. There are still SSE2 instructions in my app, and I have no idea why. Eventually, I remembered that yes, even though now I've compiled SFML and my app with SSE, SFML has its own dependencies, which are FreeType, OpenAL, OGG, and so on. There are about 5 to 10 of them. And yeah, they also use SSE2, which then gets statically linked into my final executable, so I again have SSE2 instructions. Not great. Then I tried to compile the SFML's dependencies using SSE1 and got stuck on OpenAL refusing to accept only using SSC1. It tried to still compile with all of the possible extensions. And also ran into the issue of FLAC being unable to use the assembler to assemble something. I don't know, it just threw out a -1 error, which is not good. So clearly proceeding would require compiling all of these dependencies. I had one other trick up my sleeve, which is that maybe not all of these dependencies use SSE2 instructions. And yes, in fact, only I think FLAC and OpenAL used SSE2, and the other ones did not use SSE2. Chain Reaction 2, being quite modular, has a mode in which it does not require audio for the game to work. So I decided to, well, first of all, let's try to get something to work, and then get audio to work, which is not mandatory. So then I disabled audio and compiled and linked everything, and still there were SSE2 instructions in my executable. And well, what is now the issue? I checked every library that I used and it does not have any SSE2 instructions. Where are these instructions coming from? I asked ChatGPT again and it had no idea what could be wrong. I asked it if any other libraries that were by default being linked maybe have SSE2 instructions, which it said that there is no way that is the issue, and it turns out that was the issue, because after linking those VC runtime MSVCP DLLs or libraries, after linking them dynamically so they are not executable anymore, there were no more SSE2 instructions in my executable. Now this becomes a big issue, because this means that I have to find a redistributable which doesn't use SSE2. A quick Google search says that the latest version of Microsoft Visual C++ that doesn't use SSE2 is from 2008. And well, that becomes an issue, because while my app is quite modular and it does not require the latest C++ standards, Windows XP I think doesn't even work that well with C++ 17, which is a bit old now. So the newest version of the compiler that I could use is from 2008, which is too old for me to work with, because that means it does not support the more recent, even though that is now quite old, C++ standards. So, for example, Chain Reaction 2 can work with SFML2 or SFML3. SFML2 uses the C++ standard from 2003, SFML3 uses the C++ 17 standard, which Windows XP cannot work with from what I've read online. So for this I was using SFML2, which can still work with C++ from 2003, which could fit into the requirement of being older than 2008. Unfortunately, the source code of the game itself requires, I think, at least C++ 11. I think it could work probably on C++ 11 if I tried hard enough, but for now it's on C++ 14, which both of these were, again, too new for MSVC from 2008 to have them supported. So this now seems like a dead end. The only option now seems like porting my app onto older versions of C++, which could then make it work, which is not something that I want to do. Now, the other option that I haven't mentioned yet would be to switch compilers. I'm not sure how many different Windows compilers there are, but I know of the main two, one being the MSVC compiler and the other one being GCC through MinGW, or however you read it. I don't have much experience with that though, so that would be a project for another time. So yeah, as unfortunate as it is, I cannot compile any of my more modern projects over to this specific computer because of its instruction set. I had quite a bit of fun doing this, even though at times it was very frustrating to get stuck and have to figure out what can I do next. Yeah, eventually you have to accept that it is what it is. I hope you learned quite a few things. I know I definitely did with all of the instruction sets and stuff. So yeah, the last thing that I'm gonna do on this computer before, well, putting it somewhere where it can collect dust for some time, because I'm not planning to touch it anytime soon again, is to run a demo on it, preferably one from that time, which in my case is Heaven 7, which is a demo from the year 2000. It's right up there with when this computer was released, so here is how that went. After tuning down the settings, from my experience, it runs okay. I don't have anything to compare it to since I don't have computers from that time, so I don't know what can I expect. But yeah, about 10 to 15 frames if you set the ray tracer size to 4x4 pixels, which is plenty, I guess. That is basically all from me for now. Let me know down in the comments if you would like to see me try using GCC for this. Eventually I probably will, but yeah, now it's not all that interesting. I have other stuff to do. Anyways, thank you for watching as always, and until the next one.